Unlocking Business Potential, an introduction to systems. In this first episode, we get to know John Tonkin from Brain in a Box. We also discuss the importance of documenting and leveraging business systems, discover how capturing your processes can train teams, enhance performance, and even impress your bank. Get ready for insightful stories and tips on achieving the best business outcomes. I'm your co-host, Anthony Pearl, and this is the Systems from the Box podcast. Let's start unpacking. Well, hello, everyone, and particularly welcome to you, John. Systems from the Box, your first podcast. Great to have you.
Lovely to be here.
And I think what we've got to do for everyone, first of all, is really a bit of an introduction to the audience for those that don't know you. So let's get a little bit of an understanding of what you do in your business and why everyone might be here.
We help business owners and their teams to capture the systems that they already have in their business. So I say already have in their business because every business has systems already. Simply they're in different levels of formality. Some people have them all in their head. Others have them in folders on a shelf. Some people have them in an intranet. Some people have them in a series of videos that people have to hunt for all over their Google Drive or SharePoint Drive or something. There are thousands of different ways of recording it, but really what we help our clients to do is to capture those systems. We help them to minimize the risk and maximize the benefit in those systems. And then what we're doing is to help them publish those systems either into an intranet that we create or one that they already have. And that means that they can then use them to train their team, to performance manage their team, to analyze performance, business performance, and work out where they can make improvements, give comfort to the bank, if they're going for funding, all those little things where you want to be able to say, see, this is how we do it. And so that's the critical thing for systems. So we help businesses do that.
Which is such an important part, and it's something we're going to explore, obviously, in a lot of detail. That's what the podcast is all about. And I think what we probably should do as well is explain to who the ideal people are that we're going to be talking to in this podcast, because we hope that you're one of these people that are sitting there, because it's about key decision makers, isn't it?
It is. We get asked by almost every person we're talking to, and have you had any experience in our particular field of business? And generally speaking, I can say yes, but there are those where I can't because I don't have that experience. But what I try to point out to them is that our experience is in capturing what people do in their business with their systems. It isn't in running a childcare center or in running a manufacturing business or something like that. So we work very carefully, very closely with our business owners and their teams to capture those systems.
And I think that's an important thing that we want everyone listening in to understand, is that there's going to be an enormous amount of value that we're going to get from this program. John and I have known each other for quite some time, so this is going to be a lot of fun having this discussion together. And so we hope that you'll all get plenty out of it. And a reminder to everyone that, of course, you can always leave comments, and we'll leave links in the show notes so people can get in touch and ask for things that they might want us to cover in future episodes of the podcast. But what I think we should do from the start in episode 1 here, John, is give everyone a little bit of an understanding of your background and where all of this began, because this is not a new venture. This is something you've been building on for quite some time. Worked with a lot of clients along the way, but let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about the early days in the career path.
Okay, so I'll start with the corporate career. I worked in the bank in Banque Nationale de Paris, the first bank I worked in. And so my role was training manager. And it was called training manager before it became learning and development manager, all those titles afterwards. But it was training. We had, in the Australian group for BNP, we had 5 branches spread out over the countryside across to Perth and so on. And my role was to provide training within all those companies. So doing that meant that I had to be able to meet the needs of everybody, all the standard training things. But then as we went along a little bit, we implemented a change in technology. We moved from mainframes with terminals to PCs on everybody's desk. And this meant we had to learn things like Excel and Word and so on. So there's a lot of training to do with that. But then we also implemented Lotus Notes. And what that meant was that we were developing systems exclusive for the bank, which we then had to roll out across all those other branches. And that meant that we had to have a way of doing it and explaining it quickly and getting it to them. So that was the beginning of me looking at charting, flow charting things to be able to capture the order and the sequence and the flow and everything to do with the different processes. But it was really, there was an introduction, I'd say, at BNP. And then once I eventually left BNP after 8 years, then what I did was to move across to a different company, Macquarie Bank. And in Macquarie Bank, working in Puma, which was their securitization arm, we had to provide training again. It was in the training area. And we had to do the training across 18 mortgage originators. Puma was responsible for providing funds to the originators through securitization. So what this meant was that we had to, again, we were coming from a mainframe and getting it onto PCs, and that meant we had to have all the processes ready to be able to say, here, people in Aussie Home Loans or SGC Home Loans or whoever else, here is how you manage arrears, here's how you do this, here's how you conduct that, and so on. So we needed all those processes. So that meant flowcharting everything we did. The whole process was captured in flowcharts. I still have a copy of one of them. Don't tell Macquarie Bank, but I haven't shown it to anyone. But it meant that we could then go and capture the systems with people who were actually doing it. Also bring in the tech people, the IT team, to make sure that we were doing it properly, and then formalize it in a book, a handout, which we then gave to the people who were actually implementing it. And this meant they could point to it with their finger. They could go there and go through every process and work out exactly where they were supposed to be. And that really brought home the power of doing this. It's very practical. We involved every member of their team. So it wasn't us telling them how to do. It was us guiding them as they told us what they did and making sure we were doing it properly. So it was really a fantastic process. To give you a bit of an idea how much value they got out of it, when I would walk in with a new process mapped, the first thing they would do would be to look at the little table on the front page where it said, I'd like to thank these people who helped in producing this booklet. And they would be looking for their name, and their face would come into a smile as soon as they saw their name. And, people love to see the things that they produced, that they've contributed to being used. And that's why we always use that approach, that we want to work with our clients rather than for our clients.
I was just going to interrupt you there for a moment, John, and say that's such an important concept, and I think it's something we'll come back to in future episodes. But I think often in business, the value of certain team members can feel like they've been lost in a greater idea. But then when it's documented like that, suddenly the value of their input is seen for everybody.
Exactly. And they can point to steps and they say, I did that. And there's no one who doesn't get a bit of pleasure out of saying, I did that. Old people, young people, everyone. So that was a major part of it. So if we go past there, we were going along very nicely there. And then somebody I'd worked with back in BNP said, John, I didn't know you'd left BNP. Come and work with me. So I went and joined Fish Tech and Partners, which was an award-winning tech company. We did both software development and architecture and so on, as well as selling computers and so on. But it was a great little company. We got the Telstra Small Business of the Year, and we then were so successful that Nick, the owner of the company, sold the business to Solution 6, a big accounting firm. And so I went there, and we were there, and it was good, but it wasn't so good that I felt I wanted to stay there forever. And moved in 2000 out of the corporate world and into my little office under the stairs at home. And that's when we started my first company, which went along till 2007. And it was great because I was able to stay true to what I'd been doing in the last part of working with Solution 6 and with the people I worked with in the interim period. There's one more little company, but a very small one, was working on systems. And I thought, I can do this. There's a need for it. I've established that need by seeing what isn't out there, even in the corporate world, and then taking it into the small business world. So we started that little company. It was me. It went along reasonably well. It paid the rent or paid the loan and all those things for 7 years. But Then at that point, I realized there's much more to go. And I thought, I've got a couple of products here that I wanted to get out, which is, Brain in a Box. That's where the original idea came from, because it was a product in a box, a big blue box. And we sold that to people and so on. It went through all the principles of developing your systems. And then we had another one, the Simple Systems Kit, which was a great little kit that people could buy to run workshops and so on in their business to do that. And that was the beginning of Brain in a Box. So it was product from the start. Roy West, my business partner at the time, was dead keen to say, Johnny, we can go out and sell $1,000 worth of time, or we can sell a product for $1,000 in 10 minutes. It sounds great, and it was a good idea, but it works up to a point. And it worked up to the point where we hit the GFC. And the GFC was a bit of an eye-opener for all of us. It was a bit of an eye-opener for me, because we'd sort of taken some money out of the loan, out of the security, out of the equity and so on to prop the business up a little bit as we grew. We grew up to 9 people. And then around that time, we decided, things aren't going so well. And that's when we just disbanded the partnership, got rid of a lot of people, and very sadly went down to 1 person, or 2 people originally, then down to 1. And that was the new Brain in a Box starting.
Hey, John, we should just take a quick break from the podcast so people understand a little bit more about Brain in a Box, how to get in contact with you, and of course, who you're targeting.
So if you want to contact us, just the easiest thing is go to the website, braininabox.com.au, and then go to the Contact Us page. That's probably the easiest way. It captures all the information we need, and it means everyone can go to the same place. So that's the easiest thing to do there. And the people we're targeting, we're looking to help, would be business owners who are interested in increasing their value from their systems to scale or to grow their business.
Fantastic. And of course, for those of you that are out and about walking or driving at the moment while you're listening to the podcast, details will be in the show notes, so you can just click through when you get back home. Now let's get back to the podcast. Well, I love the name Brain in a Box. I'm always fascinated by names, marketing background myself, but I love that idea because it really does speak to what you do, isn't it? It is capturing that whole, the brains of a business, and it's boxing it all together so it's there and it's transportable. And that was interesting, because the name of the business came from me working with a very gifted marketing person, and she was saying, so because I use my hands a lot, and she was saying, John, stop. How did you describe what you do then? So I was describing what Brain in a Box is all about. It wasn't called Brain in a Box at the time. And I said, well, here's the business owner, and they've got all these systems floating around in their head. And then what we've got to do is to get them out of their brain and take them down here and into a box. And then we can say, here are your systems. Here are your systems. Here's what you have to do. Here's what you have to do. And that was the whole idea all the way along. And if you look at our original logo, which is right here, you can see there that there's the brain, there's the systems floating around, there's my hands going down into a box, which doesn't come across very well on radio. But nevertheless, there it is. It was literally me just saying what we do, and that's where Brain in a Box came from. It's amazing how those things come about so naturally, and I love that. I wanted to, I guess, just in this opening episode of the podcast, to explain to people, and it's a formula that you and I spoke about as we were designing this podcast. There's a very simple idea for a business, and I'll let you give the details about it, about how you achieve the best outcomes for your business. So the very best way to get everything out of your business, get the full potential coming through, is that you're going to be looking at it and say, oh, wow, I've got to have systems. The trouble is you can have systems everywhere. And I've been into so many businesses where you walk in and this is in the older days, say, where they'd have folders up on their bookshelves there, and they'd be saying, yep, all our systems are up there. My first comment was, well, they're not down here where people's hands are. And I don't see any grubbies on them, so that people aren't using them. So very, very simply, having systems means nothing. Using systems means everything, and getting the benefit from them. But of course, it's not just using them, because people can use things differently. So what we want is to have our systems and then make sure that we provide training based on those systems, and then provide ongoing support
to the people in the business. So if we think about it, having systems is a good starting point, but that's all it is. So training people in those systems means that they now know what to do, and you can track that and so on. You can say, good, Jim is competent in doing that. I can get him to do that. And then the support is even just little things like, hey guys, it was great. Everyone did this yesterday, whatever it was. Everyone signed off or something or other on that. Or it was really good to see that you did this. You put it back when you finished. Thanks for doing that. All those little positive words are critical there. And I want to focus on that positive words bit, because if you think about it, think about your children. If you have children, they learned to walk without knowing any language. So the only thing that guided them when their little Jimmy's on the floor there and you're saying, come on, Jimmy, come and walk, son. Come on, come to daddy. And little Jimmy sees this and he's smiling and he's coming along and falling over and getting up and doing all of that. And the only thing that gives him the encouragement or the guidance to do that is the positivity that you present to the child, to little Jimmy. And so it's the same. We don't grow up. We're the same little kids we were in the playground in primary school. We're just older and uglier and all the rest of it. But we have that same need to please and that same need to respond to positive influence. So that's what systems plus training plus support is all about. You've got great systems, get them out there.
And I think it's also important to what you were just talking to there is systems can be one of those ideas that I don't want to say gets a bad rap, but people can kind of roll their eyes at when it comes to business. And hopefully that's not the reason anyone's sitting and listening in here, but it is more dynamic than what people think, isn't it? It is something, as you say, that there's an element of positivity about it that you almost need to overcome that baggage of what people hear when they hear the word.
Yeah. And I that's a very definite thing. I remember around about the time when we were undoing the partnership, shall we say, and this is no disrespect to Roy, but he was saying to me, Johnny, systems isn't very sexy. Marketing and sales is. People want to hear about marketing and sales. And there's a fashion, obviously, in business management and so on. It changes all the time. But very simply, what happens is that we have systems and we've got to get the best out of them. We need to have people actually implement them. Oh, they're not sexy. Okay. So systems, people think of it as not being very sexy. What we're actually doing, of course, is to make it not very sexy. Systems doesn't have to be sexy because systems is your business. Everything you do in your business is based on your systems. It may be based on very bad systems or very informal systems, but it's based on that. So what we have to do is to get away from this idea that systems is boring, systems is ugly, systems is only about writing things down and being, very methodical in that sense. Systems is actually making the business work, and good systems make your business work better. So this whole idea that, systems is the unsexy side of business and all the good things are other than systems is a little bit of a hard one to see sometimes.
Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're tuned in. Try this again. Before you go, don't forget to hit subscribe. Before you go, don't forget to hit subscribe on whatever platform you're tuned to. I'm seeing Jamie out of the corner of my eye. That's thrown me as well. Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're tuned to. Thank you for listening to the Systems from the Box podcast featuring John Tonkin from Brain in a Box. Details on how to contact John and his team are in the show notes, along with other valuable links you don't want to miss. This podcast is produced by Podcast Done For You. I'm Anthony Pearl. We look forward to your company on the next episode.